Welcome back, everybody, to the Fantasy Birds. The NBA season is around the corner. Let's hop into 6 sleepers I love targeting in your fantasy basketball drafts. And we're going to keep coming with some more fantasy basketball content. So like and subscribe if you want to see more. But let's not waste your time. Let's hop into 6 sleepers for 2023 fantasy basketball. The first sleeper I'm going with is Tyus Jones, for now the Washington Wizards' new acquisition point guard in DC. Now I'm targeting this Wizards offense because there's a lot of usage to go around now that you have Bradley Beal and Kristaps Porzingis departing from the starting unit. While Tyus Jones' numbers don't jump off the page at you from last year, we have to realize the role that he's going to see this year is going to be twice as big as what he was seeing in Memphis behind Ja Morant. Jones, a 27-year-old point guard. Last year, in 20 games without Ja Morant, Tyus Jones stepped into the starting lineup for the Memphis Grizzlies, and the numbers were very impressive in this role. 16.8 points, 8.2 assists, and over 4 rebounds for Tyus Jones in these 20 games that he started without Ja Morant. 20 games is a substantial sample size. It's literally a quarter of the NBA season. So if he's able to do this in Memphis, it tells me he's going to have a very high likelihood that he can replicate those numbers in DC. In these 20 games without Ja, only 3 of these contests was he under 5 assists. So bare minimum, Tyus Jones is going to be a great assist man, not to mention the scoring increase we should see in a larger role, while still giving you upwards of a steal a game, close to 1.5 projected, to go along with 80% free throws and nearly 2 threes a game we expect from Jones this year. The role is pretty safe in Washington. There aren't that many pieces in this backcourt that are going to compete with Tyus for this starting position. And we talked about in our breakout video, Jordan Poole is going to warrant a lot of the attention from opposing defenses. And I think Tyus Jones is going to be that point guard to facilitate for guys like Poole and Kyle Kuzma. For a Washington team that looks to score a lot of points this year, get into a bunch of track meets, not really stopping anyone on the defensive side, I think Tyus Jones, in the starts that we saw him play without Ja Morant, those numbers give me some high confidence that he's going to be able to be a very profitable player this year in fantasy basketball, going way too late in drafts, in my opinion, for what we project him in 2023. I don't want to say the situation is identical to Jalen Brunson, the move from Dallas where he was playing behind Luka Doncic to New York to where he's the go-to guy. Tyus Jones isn't really that type of scorer like Jalen Brunson is, but at age 27, it's very similar in their career path. They get the starting job and they get a significant boost in their usage later on in their career. I think he can have similar performance, not necessarily the numbers that Brunson is seeing in New York, but similar performances from a leap perspective, going from a secondary role to a primary position where I think Tyus Jones can profit. The next guy I want to talk about is Cameron Johnson for the Brooklyn Nets. Entering the prime of his career in Brooklyn, it looks like Cam Johnson is going to be one of the top 3 players on this team alongside Mikal Bridges and Spencer Dinwiddie. Coming over from Phoenix, where he was an afterthought on that Suns team behind Devin Booker, Chris Paul, I expect Cam Johnson to have an increase across the board in his statistics. Last year, he averaged around 28 minutes per night. This year, I expect that to get up to 32 to 33 a night, given the increased role and dependency Brooklyn's going to have on him. Over the season, he was averaging right around 15, 4 rebounds, and just under 2 assists. But with the minutes and reliance increasing on Cam Johnson, I expect these numbers to go up. I think we could see around 17 to 18 points a night, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, to go along with 1.5 steals, 47% field goal percentage, 85% free throw percentage, and nearly 2.5 threes per night. This is where Cam Johnson really has made a name for himself. His sharp shooting ability from beyond the arc, great shooter. But the role that we saw him in Brooklyn was much more prevalent than what he was seeing in Phoenix coming off the bench. And this is right in line with what he was averaging in 25 games with the Nets last year. The numbers were up on his season averages to around 16.5 points, 4.8 rebounds, and 2.1 assists. Now, while that is an increase over his season-long averages, I expect that to improve further on that this upcoming year in Brooklyn as he enters the prime of his career looking to make a name for himself. I really like Cam Johnson in category leagues. He does nearly everything well for you at the small forward position. I think with this role increase, I think in points league, he's definitely a guy too that we can look at. The next guy I am drafting extremely late in my drafts is Daniel Gafford, another guy on this Wizards team that I am attacking in my drafts. Now on the season, he averaged 9 points, 5 rebounds, an assist, and just over 1 block per game. But this doesn't really tell the full story of why I'm projecting him so much this upcoming year. Last year, he was only playing around 20 minutes per night. But with Kristaps Porzingis departing for the Boston Celtics, this is going to open up so many minutes for Gafford to step into this role. And we kind of saw this at the end of last year. In 20 of the last 21 games Daniel Gafford played in, he's playing over 20 minutes a night. So while the season averages having at 20 a night, we saw this Wizards team lean on him and give him more minutes, increasing usage as the season gone on. And that is something I believe more predictive of what we're going to see this upcoming year. In his last 5 games, when given this larger role, Gafford's averaging 16.8 points, 9 rebounds to go along with nearly a block and a half per game. While at the same time, he's shooting 75% from the field. Now, a lot of this is because he's shooting right at the rim. High percentage looks for Gafford. But for a guy that has basically zero competition at the center position, guys like Taj Gibson, who knows how old he is by now, and Mike Muscala, I mean, there's literally zero competition for Gafford to see this upcoming year now that Porzingis is out. This opens up the door for Gafford to have a monster season in Washington. One of the only defensive players they really have, a great rim protector based on his minutes per game played. So if he can get that number up to nearly 2 blocks a game, Gafford is going to pay some serious dividends in your fantasy basketball drafts this upcoming year. Definitely a center I am looking to drafting late that I believe has a very high floor given the role security he has for the Washington Wizards. My next sleeper might be one of the more controversial picks I have on the video today. It's going to be Shaedon Sharpe for the Portland Trail Blazers. Well, if you look at Sharpe's rookie season from a totality perspective, he doesn't look that impressive. 10 points a night, 3 rebounds, and 1 assist per game. That doesn't tell the full story, in my opinion, of this very talented prospect for the Portland Trail Blazers. We've already touched on Anthony Simons' expected role this year with Damian Lillard traded to Milwaukee, but Shaedon Sharpe has shown, when given an opportunity, he can be an elite scorer in the NBA. Last year, in the last 10 games of the regular season, albeit without Damian Lillard and Anthony Simons from this lineup, Shaedon Sharpe was putting up some very impressive statistics. In these last 10 games, he's averaging nearly 24 points a night, over 6 rebounds, and 4 assists. Not even to mention he was getting you a steal per game and over 2 3-pointers made. So while there was absolutely no competition at the end of the season for the Trailblazers and Sharpe, at least we do have a sample size where we've seen him be a very profitable player and elite scorer in this offense. Now, the competition is going to ramp up compared to what we saw during the stretch. Anthony Simons is back and healthy. He looks to have a dominant role in this team. And Scoot Henderson drafted in the first round. While these guys are very good and talented, I don't see why Sharpe should be pushed all the way down our draft boards in favor of these guys automatically. Now, I love Anthony Simons this year and what he's projected to do. But for Shaedon Sharpe to be basically discarded in a lot of people's fantasy opinions, I think is a little bit too harsh for a guy that, like I said, we saw scoring 24 points a night over a 10-game sample size. It's not like he was doing it in 2 to 3 games. This is 10 games. This is a pretty large chunk of the regular season for a guy who was drafted inside the top 10 just 2 seasons ago. So it's definitely not somebody I want to forget about, especially when he was able to do this while shooting 47% from the field. While the competition is definitely a concern this year with Scoot Henderson and Anthony Simons, still somebody I want to be thinking about in the back of my mind when I'm very late in these drafts heading into the 2023 regular season. Another guy in the same draft class as Shaedon Sharpe, I'm going with Jabari Smith as one of my sleepers outside the top 100 picks in most drafts. And I think this has a lot to do with underperforming compared to what people's expectations for Jabari Smith in year 1 were. Now, obviously, Smith got a lot of media attention when being compared to Kevin Durant coming out of college. Now, this is very unrealistic expectations for a rookie guy coming out of Auburn who was drafted in the top 3 of the NBA draft. While the numbers were disappointing in that aspect, still a decent rookie season, nothing like Paolo Banchero had as the number 1 overall pick, averaging 12.8 points and 7 rebounds over the entire season. Nothing too exciting here, but still a talented guy who can score in a multitude of ways. Coming into his second season, guy who only spent 1 year at the University of Auburn. With that 12.8 points a night we saw last season, I expect that to increase pretty significantly this year. In his last 11 games from the 2022 regular season, he hit this 12 points he was averaging on the entire season every single game. So at the end of the year, we saw his numbers ramp up pretty significantly, destroying his year averages. And while even in his last 5 games, he was getting nearly 2 blocks a game. At the same time, I don't want to be holding too much stock into what we've seen in the preseason from the Houston Rockets, but Jabari Smith has been the leading scorer through their first 2 preseason games. So for a very talented prospect, it's something I want to be keeping in mind as I'm late in drafts. I want to be favoring these younger, talented players that have a chance to break out, as opposed to some of these veteran guys that we kind of know what they're going to give us in their careers. Smith definitely has that spike potential for the Houston Rockets on a team that looks to get up and down the floor with some pretty impressive offensive talent they have there in Houston. So Jabari Smith is definitely a young, talented player I am interested in drafting, given the talent profile and the significant bump in production we expect from him in Houston. Category leagues, he doesn't really give you much defensively, and the field goal percentage in his rookie season was pretty abysmal. So that's definitely something you need to keep in mind if we're attacking that in category leagues. But in a points league, definitely some guy I'm looking to fire up. My next guy is going to be a category league sleeper, and it's going to be Bruce Brown for the Indiana Pacers. Now, he gets a pretty sizable contract that not a lot of people expected. One of the only moves that the Pacers made in the offseason. 2 years, $45 million for Bruce Brown, coming off a championship run with the Denver Nuggets. Now, anyone who's watching the Denver Nuggets, obviously Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, they are very talented and they control a lot of the action in the game. But Bruce Brown, one of the names you don't hear too much when it comes to the Nuggets, but he had a very large role in this team, and I think had a huge impact on their championship run. Obviously, the Pacers believe in him, giving that pretty sizable contract. And in category leagues, this is where I really like taking Brown. He does it in so many different areas for you. He'll give you over a 3 per night. He'll give you right around 12 points, 4 rebounds, just under 4 assists. He'll go along with over a steal per game and just over half a block per game, while shooting nearly 50% from the field. None of these numbers blow you away, but he's just so consistent across the board for where you're getting him in drafts. If the Pacers decide to give him an increased role, where he doesn't have to deal with guys like Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, it's really just going to be Tyrese Halliburton and maybe some increased usage for Benedict Mathurin. I think Bruce Brown is definitely a guy that if he's able to increase his numbers across the board, which are already pretty solid in category leagues, I think it's some guy that can definitely provide you some value late in drafts for a high field goal and good steal man late. Definitely somebody I want to keep in the back of my mind. Those are my 6 sleepers in fantasy basketball 2023. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more fantasy basketball content. We're going to have some more videos coming out before the start of the 2023 season. We started out with Tyus Jones for the Washington Wizards, Cam Johnson, Shaedon Sharpe, Jabari Smith, Daniel Gafford, and we finished it with Bruce Brown in your category leagues. Let me know if you agree with these sleepers. Which guys are you drafting that are undervalued according to average draft position? Let me know in the comments section. But thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys next week with another episode of the Fantasy Birds.